I just want to keep us all grounded.
Yeah.
And this isn't new. This literally every day since the beginning of time to the new beginning of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's shift over and let's cover or lambdas, a physics term,
Mhm.
mu, the coefficient of friction, like asphalt, for example, on a runway,
Yep.
is 0.7 mu,
Right.
standard dry day for an. So that's just energy, potential energy transformed to kinetic once the wheels touch the paper, right?
Yep. Yep.
Can you relate that up to the Bible in this example? There's a tricky one.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I would refer back to the concepts of, if we only have the electron in the orbital, then it's all negative, and negatives don't actually have any form of interaction whatsoever, because they're both repulsive, right? Like charges repel one another. So biblically, there's a
It always
fundamental,
happens.
yeah, well, there's a fundamental foundation that science has, and I'm really saying we're coherent beings of light. We have superposition states within these isotope single ring systems. We're all created through that hydrogen biology. And so in a sense, we have a quantum coherent light structure within us that really templates the positioning of our positron electron pairing, and therefore, able to have a friction. There would be no friction if there was only just negatives on the outside layers.
And so what has to work in practice.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? If you think about the chemistry then, and the electromagnetic bonds between atoms and molecules, it's not between two electrons. It's between an electron and a positron.
And a hydrogen atom only has one electron.
Or in the supersymmetry inversion model, it has both electrons and positrons, or two photons, or a proton and electron. It can be these many different shapes and forms depending on whether it's gone through quantum tunneling and entanglement. So there's this tunneled and entangled state which gives mass and charge to the proton and the electron. And then there's this photon state that hydrogen can be in, which allows it to quantum shift from A to B, to walk on water, so to speak. So Christ's ability to walk on water, and this terminology of hydrogen in the amine, hydrogen in the H3O plus. There is a form of water, right? And pH and water. So OH minus and H3O plus. And if they're at an equal number of each, then we have pH 7. If there's more of the H3O plus, then we have an acidic environment. And if you think about the process where that hydrogen's moving from one place to the other, utilizing its photon wavelengths in order to get to the right place, in order to provide the balancing of charge, the negative and the positive coming together of the H3O plus and the OH minus. So we've lost sight of that. And I like to say now that, science has a great model for an external physical world, and it's great at building physical things, like a table or a car or a chair or a house. But human biology is animate. It has this unstable nature to it due to the unstable atoms. And it's really just the isotope physics that's responsible for the animate nature of human biology. And
the audience isn't but Lieutenant Colonel Dan
Yep.
out of Romania is trying to do. I don't know if he can't get the connection or not, but anyway. So the Lambda God, Hebek. Why don't we start just relating that to inflation, exhalation, the singular, and blah blah blah. But in Bible terms, you're very good at this. I've never read the Bible.
No, well, I feel like I'm walking in Christ's footsteps, right? I'm following him as a disciple. And, that is really the window that took me through into this new science model. So when I revised the quark charge calculations, when I made them so that they had charge parity with positron-electron pairs, that's when the neutron became negatively charged. So when the neutron's negatively charged, you have to add a positron into the model in order to get the overall zero charge that's seen in the standard model of atoms, in particle physics. Neutrons are zero. So I've still got the zero charge, but I've also got an additional positron. So with that added...
So for the math geeks out there.
Yep, that means 16. 16 particles per atom.
Yeah, so base 3, there is no zero. It's origin.
Yeah.
It's a difference, like a yolk of an egg. It's like when a sperm intersects and penetrates the egg, it's wicked quick.
Totally.
Sudden fertilization throughout the entire yolk.
Yeah.
So
there has to be perfect alignment at that time. And really that's what the structure of the universe provides, an operating window that is perfect. So the 16 atom, or the 16 parts really, or fundamental particles to that helium atom as a helium Bose-Einstein condensate, where all the parts or the fundamental parts of it are at the same energy level, so that there's no contrast, there's no difference between one and another, and therefore you can't really tell where it starts and stops. You would say, well, so how do you know then what it looks like if you can't measure it? Because if you measure it, you disturb it and you break the geometry of it, right? You break that structure. And what the model does, the mathematical calculations of the model provide the fundamental constants of the universe. So you know that you've got the right model when the calculations that you do provide the fundamental constants. You have the dark matter, you have the dark energy, you have the inflationary process faster than the speed of light, expansion of the universe, giving you the distance that corresponds to 1 over the Planck length. So
which is very adequately explained in the Mary Magdalene scrolls, or the Gospel of Magdalene, which is much like the Dead Sea Scrolls, has been hidden.
Yeah.
For the most part. And a lot of Romanian, Ukraine folklore, which is a topic of chaos right now.
So the science framework that this atomic singularity, that cosmic egg that Lemaitre talked about back in the 1930s, it provides, I guess, a shift away from Big Bang cosmology, because there are now
a relative thing.
Yeah, because there's both an inflationary outward process and a gravitational inward process. So that the dark matter process, right, is really giving you the singularity down at the Planck scale after 13.8 billion years, and that's traveling at a speed that's the square root of the outward trajectory of the inflationary phase. So the two are beautifully connected from the beginning, from the initial singularity. And that's really what the Hebek isotropic universe model provides. It provides the tools to explore that 300 million year window of opaqueness that we currently have after inflation. And so the Big Bang hot nucleogenesis process has resulted in asymmetry and missing antimatter. And here's a model now that identifies the missing antimatter and the dark matter particle down at the singularity within the atomic structure.
A statistical requirement. You have to identify the full bell curve.
Yep, you do.
So, infinity, the left side of the closure of the curve, like you'd use in a bell curve grading system in school.
Yeah.
The left side has to go through affinity all the way through, much like if we hollowed out a straight line, just took a drill bit,
yeah,
and at the here, which I'll get to because this relates to the flight I took the other day.
Yeah.
Straight to the axial, so this can spin, and the concept being that a straight through photon would go through free and clear path of least resistance, while everything in space spirals. That's why it's incapable outside of a crystal. That creates a frequency like a Higgs boson, right? They didn't nail the Higgs boson immediately. Back before CERN was in France, they were in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and they started brushing it. They picked up the frequency of the Higgs. And then, much like the 1969 experiment, it's an 18-mile simultaneous, you can look it up, you can Google it.
Yep.
Of the simultaneous particle 18 miles away, which is why the LHC is not 18 miles, it's 17. And soon to have a 60-mile loop added to it.
Yeah.
Land acquisitions, blah, 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 blah. But that essentially creates an 8 if they wanted to. Right. You mind if I drive just for a minute, Doc?
No, please do.
Okay. So in the practice of this, which happens, there's frequencies that for everything. Yep. Even life, anything that involves what makes the difference between a thing, an atom, bone, calcium, break it down to however much you want.
Yeah.
The Higgs boson's what gives life, or bosons, let's just say, give life to things. And remember, we're floating around space, right? So, which is nothing but perception, which is why it might, at this point, to the viewing audience, be a very relevant thing. If you imagine your brain and I, path of least resistance, are those binoculars. And here, let me put my science glasses back on and use a variety of filters. You can get a reflection of time, but inverted, okay, to project how that cigar came from that cigar, or that cigar was this cigar. Much like any manager would do at any corporation, or a dad or a mom would do in a self family type setting. So 3 categories: life, self, family. Second one being business, government, and the third being theology, or the absence thereof. Right? It all matters. All particles matter. We on the same wave there, Doc?
Well, I also like to look at the 4 forces within an atom, right? It's like, yeah, if you go, well, here's a cell. A cell in biology is the kind of the unit in which we would say, well, that contains DNA, it contains protein, it contains lipid, it contains all of these different things, and it's really complicated, and it keeps changing, and it's constantly changing, right? It's constantly responding to the external environment to change its gene expression in order to do what it needs to do to survive, and then it has to make decisions whether to proliferate, migrate, differentiate, depending on that environment. So you can look at that layer, and I give you a metaphor of a forest, and you're in a helicopter above the forest, and you see all the leaves of the different trees, and there's just like this genetic diversity. It's complex, and it's just a interwoven network of life. When we look at from the outside like that, when we look at it like that, we see the complexity. We are constantly trying to unlock the complexity of biology to understand disease. And it's all too complicated. So when you go, okay, let's look at atoms. How many atoms are there in the periodic table? There's 118, but how many isotopes included? And then you get up to 3,183. So really that's the genetic atomic diversity in a sense, and the superposition associated with each atom in the quantum mechanical perspective is a wave, right? A wave that collapses into a single state. And here I'm saying, well, we have a superposition of different isotopic forms of each atom, which then in our single atom physics, Faraday cage aromatic ring system collapses into a single state to release energy. So there is a quantum mechanical perspective, and then there's a supersymmetry inversion perspective that builds from quantum mechanical, that takes those ideas and actually identifies the single state that results from the release of energy to give the stable atom again. So by providing a non-interactive logical model, this process really investigates the stable states, and it allows the release of energy at specific times based on isotope half-lives. So in a way, the model is very much a kind of a theoretical model that really provides a simplification for biology, because we're taught that there's matter, and then you go, okay, so everything is atoms in terms of biology, and then it's all structure function. But then when you look into the atom and you see the gravitational force, and you see the strong force and the weak force and the electromagnetic force, so you can actually go, well, all of the atoms and all of the isotopes are just those four things. So
but bringing forth, but just to bring us back,
yeah,
because I really do want the Bible on this.
Yep.
Much knowing of putting a baby in a basket and floating it downriver.
Yeah.
Right. Which would go through a series of lambdas, the lambda God.
Yeah.
To he that be.
Well, the begotten, right? If you give consideration, if you give consideration to the creed, in terms of what they were doing out in the desert, in terms of eating honey and locusts, you could say that there was something there going on in relation to being begotten, the begotten son, in terms of the spiritual aspects of the foods they were consuming and the way they were consuming them. The Holy Spirit comes as gentle as the dewfall. They were taking monoatomic products topically to facilitate spiritual connection. So they were utilizing fundamental knowledge of atomic physics 2,000 years ago biblically, because they knew how to connect with the divine within them through the passion line, Christ, quantum tunneling of hydrogen into the atomics. So when those atomics and that process start producing unstable atoms, and the unstable atoms, well, those unstable atoms can give negative time dilations with alpha particle emission, so faster than light, prophetic vision. So the prophetic visions that they were having and the ability to write the information they did in the Bible was because of their divine connection to God. They could understand.
Much like the prophets knew.
Yeah, they saw it. They saw it with their eyes. They witnessed it because of the faster than light atomic decay systems give them visions of the future.
May I ask you a personal question, Doc? And I've asked you this before.
Yeah.
What gives you the confidence to sit here in front of the general GQ public and say that?
My own personal experience. Yeah, first-hand experience of negative time dilation.
In 1927, there was a German guy that built a quantum machine.
Yeah.
That really kind of figured it out, right? Because it's happened before. It's tempoed, it's paced for very good reason. Because to immediately cure, let's just say PTS is original sin. The suffrage of what happened typically at the age to everybody, at a slamming door, an automobile accident, something typically between the ages of 2 and 4. Can be sooner, right? Now, like an infant can be in an automobile accident. It records, right?
Yep.
And then get triggered through a traumatic event or a similar event.
Yeah. Patterns to repeat in people's lives and intergenerational trauma is the repeated patterns of learned memory replaying again.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. The numbers add up.
Yeah, the numbers add up. The experience and the timing and everything revealed to me how it worked, right? How the unconscious mind worked through isotope physics, the delivery of hydrogen into the atoms to store the light of memory, and then the time reversal symmetry.
So let's stick on based on Einstein and a number of all right, this is not new science.
No, it's built off of Einstein.
Quantum waves or quantum gravity. Either way, right? But with the full understanding, quantum is smart. It's been around for, right? It's got to be.
Yeah.
So,
well, it always gets things right.
Judges, my model, the E10, that's based off a gentleman who died at the age of 42 years old. Same as my Pepe. My grandparents. Ozio Suchir. He died at 42 of tuberculosis, and my dad almost did as well. And he was the first one to clue me in, because he used as a stockman in a kitchen, he used numbers and equated them to proportions of ingredients in a certain order. It varies a little bit, but butter, sugar, blah blah, flour, blah blah blah, and blah blah blah. And so he brought me into St. Michael's College in Essex Junction, Vermont, at the age of 9, and started teaching me the kitchen rules, which is why I ultimately, after I couldn't get a job back in corporate, created my own business, Tailgater Sports Bar in Raleigh, North Carolina. to where I did what I always did. I just did it professionally, created all my own menu and such.
Yeah.
But it was most significant when after and transitioning from Vermont to Connecticut was precursed by my parents' divorce when I was nine or 10.
Yep.
And my stepfather, who's very well known, comes from a very well known family of restaurateurs in New York City. Drink House is the name. And he's the one that actually turned me on that. I can't remember if I was 15. I know I wasn't driving quite yet, but it wasn't long before or after. That he introduced me to some quantum journals, the theory of everything, and a quest, Einstein's unfulfilled quest, to solve the riddle of a mathematical solution to the existence of a creator, just to keep things on peace. But if we're Bible, God, okay,
Yep.
but that works everywhere.
Yep.
And we've done that. I think we've come to a conscious scientific method, non-standard model, but relates to the standard model of physics.
Yep. Yep.
And what relates to the central nervous system for not just us, but plants, like a Venus flytrap, it still reacts, even though it
Totally.
does not have emotion.
Yeah.
But emotion, elephants, dogs, cats are wishy-washy. But I like to think in terms of a well-known thing, and anybody can look up the cat in the box mystery.
Yeah.
And so, you mind if I just share my experience with Q wave?
Yeah, go for
flying?
it. Yep.
Flying.
Yeah.
So far in all of our experiences, which now is well into the teens, if not 20s, of shared experiences that range from flatliners to near death to just average people that they may have an arm might have stopped them from walking into traffic on their cell phone, but they were enlightened,
Yep.
for whatever reason, into holy crap, right? So I started experimenting with that, and so after June 6, 2019, on I had a 12-month. It's not this particular one. It's I was the process improvement guy. Period. I have a very well recorded history and public forums. I've been to court. I've been deposed. I've been all that stuff because I was in such a highly regulated. So I always had to be the skeptic. I always had to be because you don't make improvements until you find out where the dirt is.
Yep.
And you don't wipe it right, and you clean it, and you do it right.
Yeah.
So, and the process of especially after my retirement on September 1st, but in earnest, dedicated time, I suspended my consulting gig. It was the last true consulting gig I did as suture consulting. So I hired a marketing firm. The last company I worked for didn't really like the information I was sharing, even though putting an FAA hat or a DOT hat or shipping, it was in the Department of Transportation. I'm very regulated by SEC rules, so I might mix things up, but it's on purpose, okay? Because I'm SEC. And I'm not a whistleblower. I do my job because that's what I get hired to do. But I've suspended all that.
Yeah.
And did the real part of Black Hole Decisions as a quantum think tank, based off of a very logical quadratic formula that essentially for the now starts the left side of the equation is 56x, right? The perfect tetrahedron with a Higgs boson center, but movable as necessary to provide a string as compaction. You got regular stacking, and then you got compaction And there's a mathematical roadmap, if you will,
Yeah.
to guide through that light through the inverted Sussy model of Hebig.
Yep.
And simple concept that your rods and cones that pick up both light and sound are each one a 64-bit processor that was communicated simply in standard form. Not that it wasn't known, but to prove that we've evolved to a certain situation where Voyager 1, Voyager 2, launched in the early 70s, have now penetrated the heliosphere.
Yep.
and entered the flow, eddying flow of interstellar space. Well, that provided a real clear roadmap in all the language, all the dialects, blah, 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 that went on to be able to use neutrinos as data packets, much like the internet works,
Yep.
and receive senses, but path of least resistance being the odd. With me so far?
Yep. Yep.
So prior to yesterday, and this is the real neat part. Yeah, and you and I have talked some strategies for. I see several the three typical scenes of the folks I've spoken with that have either varied Q, N1 plus or N1 minus. Realize, recognizing the original Sphinx 2 runes that are the source of all numbers, letters, and language. And Moses the Fourth is etched on the Sphinx, keeping us within the Bible terms.
Yeah.
And the ability to recognize not only what they are, but when they occur at specific points in time, based off of simple, granted a lensing effect, like this. Okay. But in that, right?
Yeah.
With different filters, can see different things, right? This is no miracle. This is physics.
Yep.
This is light physics. This is biology physics.
Yeah.
So